Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite parts of government contracting, capture. So today we're going to be talking about federal capture and how to make it simple so that you can actually begin to implement it out there. Let's dive into today's training. In today's training, we're going to be talking about capture and made simple, right? How to make capture simple so that you can succeed in the federal government. I wanted to start today's training off of by just putting capture in perspective the way I describe it to people, right? I've been doing federal sales for 20 years as a small business owner, right? And for the last 5 years, I've been teaching people about various aspects of it, but I spent 20 years doing it. And the way I teach the three aspects of sales in the federal market is saying you've got business development, capture, and proposal management. Fundamentally, that is sales. By the way, marketing just fits into that. It's not its own thing to me. But business development, that is about understanding an agency, sometimes better than they understand themselves, right? But understanding an agency and building relationships. So here I said develop relationships, building strategic relationships within that agency, and then identifying opportunities. When you do that, when you've identified opportunities, you move into capture. And capture management is, to me, basically about shaping an opportunity so you have the best chance of winning. And I'll describe that in today's training, so I won't go too far. And then once you have an opportunity that has solidly been captured, you move it forward, then proposal management is just making sure that you're doing whatever it takes to get a winning proposal submitted to the government. A winning proposal is one that when the government looks at it, they go, wow, we should award to this company. They might get 3 or 4 winning proposals, right? So you're still going to have competition. But your proposal is not having to fight against itself by being a not winning or not compliant proposal. And so to me, basically, that's what proposal management is, right? And just saying this again, business development is understanding the agency, building relationships, and finding opportunities. That leads to capture management on a single opportunity, which we'll talk about today. And then proposal management, making sure you're writing winning proposals. When you do that, that all leads to contract awards. You're guaranteed to win. I don't know the frequency yet, but you're guaranteed to win if you do the right things the right way and enough of the right things. So today I want to cover down on capture, and what is capture is what I want to just start with. How do I describe it? The same way I just did business development. When we have this common understanding going into that, I want to talk about how you should be thinking about the capture activities you're doing as shifting left in the acquisition lifecycle that the government follows. The government has a process that they follow to procure services or products, and we have a process that we follow, a sales process. And so you want to shift left, and the idea of shifting left is getting early in the process. So we'll talk about that. And then I'm going to wrap up with talking about the capture pipeline stages that I use and that are good baselines for you to use, and the purpose of each stage and what criteria I hold myself accountable to that enables me to have a quality sales pipeline. And a quality sales pipeline to me means it's got winning opportunities in there, that some of them I'm going to be winning. And it's not going to be that infrequent. So that's what we're going to cover down today on. If you don't know me, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's a process. When we follow a process, we have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. And that's what we're going to drive forward today. So let's talk about capture. And by the way, if you haven't been to one of my trainings before, I tend to talk at a really fast pace because I have yet to learn how to shrink my content down. I got so much I want to say, and I only got 30 minutes to say it in. So I speak at a fast pace, but you can watch it on half speed later. So let's talk about what capture is. Capture is a couple of basic things the way I describe it. And I really do try to simplify how I explain it, right? I can go in a lot more nuance, but simplifying something makes it easy to understand and get started and to get better at, right? And so the first thing is a deeper understanding of the customer's need, their requirements, right? I always talk to people about when you're doing capture, you want to understand the pain points and the challenges and the objectives much further than what's in the documentation. So if I look at a PWS or a draft opportunity coming out, you see it on GovWin or whatever, and I can look in, they might literally have a stage that talks about objectives or something. But why? What are they doing? And so for me, capture is about digging into that need, You say you've got this need for this requirement. Where's that coming from? Is it tied to a program office's goals and objectives? Is it tied to the agency's goals and objectives? Do these tie all the way back to some initiative? For example, I got a customer who's going after a zero trust architecture opportunity. Well, a lot of what they're doing ties all the way back to a presidential memorandum. And so being able to understand that need and where it fits into context beyond just what you see there, well, Capture does that. You can't get that information from just reading a piece of paper. And that's the difference, right? That's where you accelerate past your competition, is when you start having calls. By the way, fundamentally, Capture is picking up the phone and talking to people. Right? There's other ways, but if all you're doing is reading a piece of paper and then responding to the proposal, you're basically just responding to a proposal. You're providing a quote with a lot of words. Capture is about truly understanding the need. That's one of the first things they want to see in a proposal. And I don't want to pretend like I'm talking about proposals today, but the government wants to see an understanding of our needs, our mission, what we need and what we want. Yes, you're going to cover down on all the shall statements, but do you understand the, well, we kind of want statements, right? That aren't even written down. That's the understanding of need that I'm talking about. The second thing I want to point out about what Capture is, and the next two are fundamentally it for me. It's about shaping the technical requirements, and it's about shaping the acquisition approach or requirements in a way that fit your company's best options, right? Positions your company best to be able to win this opportunity. Capture is happening early in the process, and I'll talk about that more in a second. But it's your chance to shape everything that's in that RFP when it drops in a way that's positive for your company. Right? You have different levels of success on different opportunities, but this is your goal. And so shaping technical requirements, I don't want to say everything that's in here, but I want to give you a couple of examples of how you can shape requirements. And this is the program office, right? You're having a conversation with program office. You might have these conversations virtually or not even one-to-one, but you might have them through an RFI. Like if you respond to an RFI, you can try to shape the technical requirements there, but you really want to get in and meet some of the people in the program office. The earlier in the cycle you are, the better chance you have at doing this. But so one thing that you could shape is the certification. I used to play with this one all the time. So you could think about industry or organizational certifications like ISO or CMMI. But the one that was a big challenge for me in my last company was people would sneak in this requirement that says the company must be Microsoft Gold certified. And so I would get in there and say, that's a useless certification. It's sufficient for you to have Microsoft Silver and below, because the only difference between going from silver to gold is the number of licenses you have sold. So unless you have a requirement for us to sell licenses on your behalf, that's an unnecessary one. And you get rid of a lot of good competition or a lot of good vendors who can support your needs and have a lot of good past performance, but they don't have that certification. Now, of course, I only had Microsoft Silver. If I had gold, I'd be shaping it maybe the other way, saying, hey, you should have Microsoft Gold. I'm not here to say which one's the right one. I'm saying shape it in the direction you want. So if you think about CMMI, there's level 2 and level 3. You don't really need level 3. Just stick with level 2 because that's all I got, right? And I'm trying to pull them down. The next one is past performance. There's past performance from the acquisition side, but there's also past performance from the program office side. Sometimes they say, oh, I really want you to have experience in the Navy, or I want you to have experience in our agency, or I want you to have experience with similar size. It's got to be 100,000 user environment. Well, if you have those kind of things, you want to push for them. You want to push for past performances that are more restrictive and push more of your competition out. That's Capture. But if you don't have some of that, you want to make the rationale on why past performance in the Army is just as good as the Navy, right? Kind of, right? But, it's related, similar size agency, et cetera. Or you want to sit there and say, look, I've been doing SharePoint for a long time. I'm an expert at it. You don't need me to have 100,000 user environment. You have the same problems at a 5 or 10,000 user environment as you do at 100,000. Let me walk you through it. And so you want to be able to get in there on Capture and to have these conversations and go, what you really want is people who have experience doing these complex type of things, whether it's 10,000 or 100,000 users, doesn't matter. If they haven't done these complex issues, then you're going to run into a problem. So that's Capture. You're having the conversation. You're trying to raise up the things you can address as needs and requirements and reduce the things you don't have. So for example, I don't have I did, but I don't have 100,000 user past performance. I want to lower that. And I want to beef it up with an actual set of experience around it. So the third one around shaping the technical requirements is the task areas. If you've ever, I mean, I know all of you have probably, but if you've looked at a PWS and you see task areas, there might be 7 or 10 task areas, whatever it is, doesn't matter. You go to the scope and you look at the task area section, it says 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. When you look in there, what you want to do when you're trying to shape the technical requirements is to, kind of push things out or minimize things maybe that aren't your strength area, and also bring some stuff in, task areas that maybe they're not thinking about. One example of something that I like putting in my last company, when I was doing SharePoint and doing SharePoint migrations in particular, they would have all these technical things. I'm like, hey, you need to put a task area in that says something along the lines of user adoption and acceptance, right? Because that's a big matter of success with the customers, is whether you have user adoption problems. If you can't get a communication plan in place or an adoption plan in place, then how are we going to make sure our project goes smoothly? So you can add these in, or you can try to whittle down some and make them a little less important. You want to look at every aspect of an opportunity and go, how do I shape it to the best interest of our company? I don't want to just accept it for what it is. Sometimes I have the influence to be able to shape it. Sometimes they'll go, yeah, thanks, Neil, good idea, but no. But Capture is about pushing that. So that's the technical requirements. When you think about the acquisition approach, and it was fun. I did a training a while back, and I was talking about how you can shape acquisition approach. And I had a contract officer reach out and said, they had just gotten out, but they had said, you can't do that. I said, well, look, this is how we do it. And when they heard it, they're like, oh my God, yes, you can. And what I was suggesting is you can't force a contracting officer to do what you want, but shaping an acquisition approach is coming to the government early enough before they've made a decision and giving them the data and evidence on why the decision you're recommending should happen. So an example is the contract vehicle. Before they make that, if you can get in early enough, you can influence them to go on a GSA schedule, or you can convince them to go on STARS 3 or whatever contract vehicle. First thing you want to do is make sure you're pushing it to a contract vehicle you have. Then you're pushing it to one that maybe a partner has. It's the same thing with a set aside, getting in there and trying to get them to push it to HubZone, woman-owned small business set asides. The thing about that one, though, is you need like 19 friends to also come in with their companies saying, we would like this to be set aside for woman-owned small business. But that is shaping the acquisition approach. What direction is the government going to go? Are we going to put this contract out full and open, total small business, or are we comfortable going all the way to woman-owned small business set aside, right? And so getting in there and shaping it requires you to have these conversations. You even want to try to get in before the sources sought. Of course, when the sources sought happen, sources sought notices come out, that's a chance for you to set aside or drive this set aside. But you really want to get in even earlier when the before that RFI and sources sought is dropped. So the last one is an example I've used, and there's many different examples I could have in shaping the acquisition approach. You can watch previous training where I've listed too many of them in one training. But past performance. So I talked about a technical past performance. Well, here I'm talking about past performance, which past performances count. I would like my subcontractors' prime past performances to count. What if they're an 8A and I'm an 8A? They count. What if I have subcontracts? I want them to count, right? And so you want to get in and have this conversation with the contracting officer before they write the RFP, and certainly before they've begun to settle down on what they're doing, and talk to them about, hey, I know you're saying you want 3 prime performances for these $5 million, this $5 million prime contract, but I have none of that, but I have 3 $20 million subcontract opportunities where I've worked with Northrop Grumman or Lockheed or somebody on these major projects. Could you consider those as well? You know, do you really need it to be a prime past performance at that level? Whatever it is you're trying to have a conversation on, you want to get in and shape that way of thinking in the government's eyes. Okay, so do me a favor, if you understand where I'm going, by the way, just let me know that you're tracking on these things that I said, but by putting in it, shape the opportunity or shape the op. Capture is about shaping that opportunity in the most likely way to help your company succeed. So while you're doing that, I want to talk about shifting left in the acquisition lifecycle. And actually, I'm going to jump ahead one slide. Here I'm talking about how to do it and what's going on, but I did want to use this slide just to put it in your head. This is an actual government acquisition lifecycle roadmap, right? And so it's a beautiful roadmap. I love it. It's for USDA. That's where I got it originally. It was several years ago, so I don't know if it's been modified. But this is exactly what every federal government agency should give to industry. This is our process. Know our process and know where an opportunity is. The reason I'm saying this is because somewhere in here is an award. See it over here on the bottom left? The bottom left is an award. Success in government contracting is getting involved earlier and earlier. For example, if you don't look at an opportunity until it was awarded, you're not going to be able to win it, right? Makes sense. But all the way coming back, if you don't see it till it hits SAM, yes, you might win it, but the chances are small. As you keep coming back along this roadmap, that's called shifting left in the acquisition lifecycle. So shifting left is this vital thing to success. And here, that's why I put at the very top, when you shift left and you get engaged early, your relationships are stronger and you have this ability to influence, right? You can talk to people. You can take longer to talk to them, having 3 or 4 meetings over a couple of months. I was just talking with a customer and saying, yes, you're going to be working on opportunities that you hope will be dropping in the next 3 to 6 months, but also put into your pipeline today, FY 2025 opportunities that are expiring then, that'll be getting thought about in 2024. That's shifting left. Get in there, find friends who are in the incumbent, get engaged. When you shift early in the process, you have much more time to get something done and much higher chance of success for influencing. So here, I laid out that same roadmap I showed you with USDA. I laid it out in my way of looking at the acquisition lifecycle. And basically, the part most of us are really familiar with is right here in the middle where it says market research. And this is the formal process, right? This is an RFI, the sources sought. And then it moves from that to an RFP phase where the RFP drops, they make a contract award, and they do execution. By the way, the reason I have even execution in here is because if I don't win a contract, or I do win a contract, while it's in execution, as far as I'm concerned, it goes into my pipeline and I'm going to win it again, or I'm going to win it next time, right? If it was good enough for me to want to win, especially when it gets to be larger and larger opportunities, you want to be looking at that opportunity the whole time. You don't have to spend a lot of cycles, but you're tracking. You're never losing sight of that opportunity. So let's shift left all the way to the left. So I talk about how the acquisition lifecycle begins with an informal phase and then and then goes into the formal phase. So the informal phase is when somebody gets an idea in their head. And I'm not talking about the recompetes for a moment. Let's just talk about new ideas, right? They're having ideas out there. Capture and business development is about trying to get engaged early on when they're having these conversations. Frankly, the idea phase is, see where I have it as business development. This is where business developers can come in and talk about the company's expertise, where they can bring in the company's CTO to talk to the agency CTO to talk about futures of technology, or you can be even thinking about elevators. Hey, I know the elevators are going to, be refurbished or whatever, replaced in several years, but we can use AI to stretch that out 2 years longer than you expect. And so you have an increased cost of support, but you don't have to have that big outlay. These kind of conversations are at the idea phase. And as that idea matures into, let's start looking at it, before they get to formal market research, people just go online. You know what it's like. They talk to people. They say, what are you doing at your agency? What are you doing with your other customers? And then they go online and they look. I was talking to a customer today about zero trust, and I said, make sure you're putting out more training. And I don't mean like formal training, but more information that could be helpful to people when they're exploring ideas, in their case around zero trust, but you want to do it around your company's products, right? And services. What might they be looking for? Somebody might look out and go, what are the top 3 elevators I should be looking at? What's the top paint I should be using these days to be green friendly? What should I be doing for software development? Is Google or Microsoft or Oracle the best cloud platform? These kind of questions, you have an understanding of what your customer would be asking. Well, you want to get engaged with that kind of content creation. And again, you can borrow it from Google and Microsoft. But during this requirement exploration phase, capture and business development can get in there and start sharing some of that information. So you don't make the buyer have to come out and find it on a website or on LinkedIn or whatever. Yes, it's there, but proactively bringing it in. And so this idea that happens when business developers are hearing about it in particular, the minute it's turned into this informal stage, that's the beginning of capture to me. That's when you start thinking about it. When it gets to the formal stage, everybody knows about it here. This is why being an incumbent is so powerful, right? And I get it. If you're not an incumbent right now, you're just in a jam, but go become a subcontractor and you'll start getting traction. And when you're an incumbent, you're inside the wire, the way we described that, right? Then you're able to have conversations informally about the very people who are doing the work. You're able to put something into your pipeline saying there's nothing on GovWin, there's no forecast, there's nothing in SAM. It's just an opportunity we see at this customer, and we think we could develop it into a $5 or $10 million opportunity, whatever, right? You'll figure that stuff out. And so here I put suggestions on how you can influence this stage. You can take a screenshot of this. If you're on the podcast, come back to the video later. But you can put information out that helps inform the buyer about what your company does and gets them to start early on thinking about things the way you want them to think. When you think about zero trust, this is why you should go to this company. And it happens to be, we have a very strong relationship with this company and blah, 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 right? And then as you move into the formal stage, it's what I'm hoping a lot more of you are very familiar with. So this is the shifting left in the acquisition process. When you think about capture, it gets easier when you shift left. So here again is just some of the what I was just describing. I just wanted to pause for a couple of times, right? Here, the business, the program office is thinking about the outcomes they want. They're thinking about critical information they got to do, and then they start getting engaged in that market research activity. And so here, according to USDA, the way they're doing it, right? Once they start identifying that critical information, they're noodling an idea around and they come around that right-hand bend, they're into the formal process. They're starting to come out with these draft BWSs. They're engaging the contracting shop. That's when it starts hitting the formal process. So if you can get in there and build relationships early on with an agency and care enough about an agency, then you'll be able to have the conversations way to the left. I don't have a whole lot of time to talk about the capture pipeline stages, but I did want to make sure I introduce you to the way I track them. Many people do it in different ways. I'm doing it in a way that's not overly original. It's just very simple. I don't like a complicated sales lifecycle or process. And so I just want to walk you through the 7 stages I have here basically in my sales pipeline. And you can see, let me just start here at the bottom of the numbers. The first 2 stages are business development. So when opportunities are popping in, I still kind of consider this business development because we're trying to decide, is this really an opportunity? The stages 3 and 4 is when we start getting into capture. And this is where we spend our money to shape the opportunity. And as we move into stage 5, this is when the RFP drops. It's a proposal. And then stage 6 and 7, it's the award phase and do an activity. So let me walk you through those stages really quick. The first stage, an opportunity, no matter how it comes in, GovWin, long range acquisition forecast, SAM, you hear about it from somewhere. As long as it looks like a fit, I haven't proven that it's a fit, but as long as it looks like a fit, I drop it in. So let me use zero trust as an example because that's in my head. I go, hey, that looks like a zero trust opportunity. It goes into my pipeline. I want to pursue it. I have some criteria in order for it to go from qualified to unqualified. And gate 0 is that meeting. And you can have the meeting with yourself in your computer. You know, hey, is this right? But gate 0 is where I hold myself accountable. Every gate is where I hold myself accountable to a certain set of criteria. In order to move from unqualified to qualified, an opportunity must have this set of criteria met. An example is I must have validated that it is a real opportunity, that somebody is thinking about it from a money perspective. They're getting ready to put it into the formal process. Or I talked to the KO and the contract officer said, yes, it is a real opportunity. Whatever it is, then it's qualified. But it also must meet the internal qualifications or criteria of it matches my core competency. It's in my target agency, right? These basic qualifications that I have at the very early stage. At early stages of a capture life cycle, you're not spending a lot of money or time. And so you want your criteria to be easy. So then going from qualified to pursue, in order to do this, one of the most important criteria I have is that we must have completed an RGA, a requirements gap analysis. And you can watch a separate training on that I do. But a requirement gap analysis is basically taking the opportunity and putting it on a spreadsheet and scoring it. Do we have skills on a scale of 1 to 5? How strongly do we feel? And do we have past performance? How many? 1, 2, 3 on these things. And so there's several other things you can watch where I really break it down later. But moving from qualify to pursue is a really important stage, because this is where you say, I truly understand the requirements and I truly understand our weaknesses. And our weaknesses are not so weak that we couldn't shore it up with a teaming partner and still go after this as a prime. Or it might tell us, you know what, we can still do a good portion of this, but let's go find a prime, right? That's this idea between qualified and pursue. Are you really looking at it? And in order to go through that gate, one, you must have met with a contracting officer, the acquisition shop. What I like to say about your pipeline is, if you're not meeting with the contracting officer, somebody is. Somebody did and somebody is. That should be a flag for you right away, that if you can't get traction. And so the rest of these, you can see as it moves forward, it's just advancing the activity. I just want to respect our time. Here's what I want you to remember from today's training. Capture is a proactive activity. If all you're doing is bringing opportunities into your pipeline and then responding, that's reactive, right? You're missing out on this great portion of federal sales, which is capture. The second thing is, remember, shift left in the acquisition lifecycle. Begin to have conversations. And so what shifting left requires is for you to find opportunities that are generally 6 months plus. If it's inside of 6 months, it gets hard to shift left. And then the third thing I really want you to remember, besides spelling capture correctly, is that have clear capture criteria, the way I just described it. You need to make sure you hold yourself accountable so opportunities can move forward that are great and the other ones come out. It's a process. Government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. Hope you remember that, and I'll see you in the next training.